For the past 1 hour, I've been journaling about a certain topic, which is somewhat of an eye opener for me, and I am really grateful that I had the chance to journal it. And that topic being what is known today as dopamine. Now, some of you guys might be familiar with the term dopamine. When we say dopamine, this is basically the feeling, or this is my own interpretation, but this is the feeling of you having the desire, or having that feeling of craving towards something, someone, or basically anything. Like, this could be either foods that you like, um, movies that you would want to watch, or contents that you would like to consume, or basically anything of that. Now, the thing about dopamine is a lot of people tend to confuse dopamine with happiness in general. When, if I'm being honest, I am one of those people before, but the more I look at it, the dopamine is far from actual happiness. It can't even compare, bro. Like, the thing about dopamine is more likely fueled by curiosity itself. Like, dopamine, it's not something that basically just something you could control. Like, you could you could you could not stop it. Like, whenever you have dopamine rush in your head, chances are is that you won't know how to stop it, or that you never really have full control of it. Because you see, dopamine kind of works like an addiction itself. Now, I know what might all of you be thinking. You might be thinking that dopamine is not that bad. Like, anyone could have some rush of dopamine. It's okay. It's healthy for your mind. Well, the thing about now is, if you take a look at or closely at our own environment, we are living in an age of comfort. This is the best time that we've lived today. Because nowadays, you don't really have to do that much of an effort to get some of the things that you like. I mean, of course, there are some things which you need to put effort into, but things such as food, or having a fresh food, um, access towards information, or basically just being able to contact others, it's easy for us. Like, it's not even that hard, which is compared to before, where you have to actually go outside, you need to work for it, all of that stuff. So, the thing about, or the one thing that I hate about today's generation is because of its comfort. Not only because it's way too easy, but because it's kind of being powered by dopamine itself, if you think about it. Like, just like what I've said before, dopamine is the feeling of wanting, the feeling of craving. Now, if you take a closer look towards the products that you buy, or the things that you do, most of them, I could bet, are things which is involved with dopamine, or you do them for the sole sake of reaching this dopamine scale. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there, let's say for example, I know this sounds really this sounds really ironic or stereotypical, I don't know. Let's say for example, junk foods, or basically just things that are tasty, such as fast foods. Now, the thing about fast foods is that you never really get that much happiness towards them. Like, you might think that eating those amounts of food could lift off your stress towards life, or basically just make you more happier. When in reality, that's actually your dopamine receptors um, responding towards those stimuli or stimulus. Because you see, all of us in general have dopamine in our mind. It's hard to remove dopamine. Like, even if you are already going towards dopamine detox or self improvement, it's still hard to get rid of dopamine. And even I get some urges because of my dopamine. Now, there is one problem with dopamine, and that dopamine never really gets you satisfied towards life. Dopamine is the type of happiness that like you're only happy whilst you're doing it, but once you're done with it, you're kinda not that happy, or which is what I would like to call as instant gratification. Because you see, dopamine and instant gratification are somewhat linked. They are somewhat linked because let's say for example, you've eaten a bunch of junks or you've eaten fast food. Okay, at first you feel happy, of course. Even I would feel happy, of course. You're eating something which is good for your taste, and is actually pretty yummy. And once you are done, or once you exit that restaurant doors or those fast food doors, start to get that feeling of regret that, man, like, I kind of fucked up my diet, huh? Or like, it's not really that good as I expected. You get those thoughts. Like, dopamine is literally the enemy of everything if you think about it. And it's always involved on everything. It kind of works just like a drug or a quick fixing drug. Like, think about all of the drug users or the drug addicts that actually know that what they are doing is actually harming them. Like, they actually want to stop, but in reality they can't. That's the effects of dopamine. You want to stop, you know that you need to stop, but you can't. This is why many people have a struggle towards their own diets. It's because dopamine is constantly urging them or tempting them to go ahead and chase those delicacies or those novelties. Like, it's kind of a bit it's kind of like a temptation if you think about it. It's always tempting you. It's that little devil that's always poking you to go ahead and try this out, and that giving you the same excuse that it's not that bad. Like, maybe if dopamine was not that much common here, then perhaps it's fine. But if you think about it, every day we experience a bunch of dopamine intake within our lives. Like, dude, living a life of filled with dopamine is not living a life filled with happiness. I just want to let you know that, like, you could have as many dopamine intake as you want, and you're just gonna suffer more. Believe me, because dopamine is just addiction in general. Like, you might think I'm exaggerating, but it's true. It is true. Because if you think that I am basically just exaggerating, like, bro, try not using your phone for one day and let's see if you could take it or not. That's the effects of dopamine. You don't even realize that you're already hooked with it. Just like drugs, you don't realize if you're already hooked with it or not. And once you realize it, you're kind of basically way too late about it. Well, not way too late. It's just harder to stop it at that moment. Like, bro, it's just sad how dopamine is basically seen throughout all these years or all these modern things that is happening towards us. Like, I think people are starting to crave a life that is filled with dopamine and not a life that is filled with happiness, and that's just sad. So in conclusion, choose happiness, bro, not dopamine.